So, hello everyone. Uh, in this lecture, we will be discussing about the elements of culture. So, this is a separate topic originating from culture and its definition only. Now, this question can come in a 10 marker or it can come in a 15 marker, but question more than that is not possible according to me. There is a topic on in this which is of culture pattern and culture complex, which I believe can be separately asked or in past has been already been asked as a 10 marker. So what we will try to do is that we will try to understand these elements and uh, and try to have a better understanding of this. Now if we look at culture, so in culture when we were discussing about culture meaning and definition, we studied the first definition of E.B. Tyler. Yes, so E.B. Tyler, in his work Primitive Culture, that this is his book. So in his book Primitive Culture, he defined culture. He defined culture as a complex whole, which includes. So he defined culture as a complex whole, which includes. What did he write? Which includes knowledge, belief, art, knowledge, belief, art, values, norms, and so many things. Yes, and extra. So he would have said that culture is a complex whole which includes knowledge, belief, art, values, norms, customs acquired by man as a member of the society. So when he was saying all these things, that is knowledge, belief, art, values, norms, or customs. So these components are actually the elements. These terms are actually the elements of culture. These terms are actually the of culture. Elements of culture. Now elements these elements are actually very much limited in the definition. But if you go into detail, you will find that there can be many terms, many things which are not specifically defined, but are there in presence in a particular society, in a particular culture. So here, what we will try to do is that we will try to discuss few of these elements in bit so that if a question comes on elements of culture, you will be able to write that particular answer. Okay, so it is must that you write about E.B. Tyler. Secondly, it will also it is advisable that you even write about Clark Whistler. So Clark Whistler, what he did that he defined culture. He mentioned culture, that culture has two components. What is that is non-material and material. In the material, non-material aspect, it includes values, norms, sanctions, and etc. Like whatever things which are not there in non-material can be included here. Now, for material things, these are those things which are tangible and whose presence were made because of resources like weapons, tools, arms, etc. These all were material things. Yes. So material things depict more kind of a civilizational component, or they depict the, like for example, they also include the pottery. So it is from these material aspect that archaeologists trying to make inferences, try to deduce the non-material cultural aspects, non-material cultural aspects. Because if a particular culture, for example, if a particular culture, like example, the Indus Valley civilization, yes, so Indus Valley civilization existed such a long time back, At that moment, there may be non-material and material aspect. But if today we have to study Indus Valley civilization, so the presence of non-material culture will be nil. Yes, there may be only stories of folk tales which may be present in a close by region, but they would have been so much diluted over the years that their significance would be minimum, or they would be so much doubtable. So archaeologists and anthropologists depend upon these material aspect to study culture. Yes. Now, for Clark Whistler, culture includes non-material and material, and he also says that these components are universally present. These ones are universally present, but they may exist in different form. But they may exist in different forms. Different forms. Okay. So mention E.V. Dyler, then mention about Clark Whistler, and then we will now be talking about different elements. So the first element which we will be talking is our values. So in values will be studied in detail of ethics. Values, yeah. So values will be studied more in more better terms in the subject of ethics. So whatever it meant in ethics also means the same in culture also. What basically it means? It means that see, values can be both positive, they can be both negative. They may be desirable, they may be non-desirable. They depict the importance of particular thing in a particular society, degree of importance, and because of this importance, what happens that these values shape our standards. So what happens that these values shape our standards, and on these standards a person, a society, an individual, he reacts or behaves. Yes, if his values are good, if his values are moral, if his values are ethical, then his standards will be solid. These standards will be more positively oriented, more optimistic, and based on these standards, his behavior will be accordingly in conformity or in stability with the particular situation. For example, if we talk about if we talk about a citizen, so if we, like let's take a citizen in India. See, for him, what happened that in Indians we have high level of nationalism, we have high level of patriotism. So our patriotism. So for us, this value has brought in a standard, that is respecting our respecting our national flag, our country over other things. When we talk about Indian citizens, we place our country first and then we place other values. For example, we place religion after country. If for like if I for me if someone asks me that you have to choose between your country or you have to choose between our religion, so I would choose my country over my religion. And why is this so? It is because of a freedom fighter. A freedom fight against the British, against the colonials, was such that different religions in India came together to fight against the foreigners and to free India and establish a feeling of nationalism. Establish a feeling of nationalism. And so for us, our standards have been set such that our behavior will always be in of our country, favor of our country. You may go anywhere, you may be in any part of the world, but the connection which you feel for a country will be utmost. Now, the value the value meaning is only this. You can you can write your own definition, or you can write your own example in this, and that's it. So second component which we'll be talking is norms. Norms are also mentioned in the same ethics topic. Similarly, there will be rules, regulations also. Now, what are norms? Norms is a standard pattern of behavior that is accepted by a society. Norm is a standard pattern of behavior that is accepted by a society. That is accepted by a society. Now, norms differ from society to society, differ from society to society. Norms are basically the rules. Like, for example, in a particular society, there will be a norm that everyone, that the society members have to come and do this particular kind of a job. They have to make such contribution in the security, or in feeding the citizens, or in no in, or for money for the guards, for the gardeners. So these all come under the norms. Norms and customs are very much related. Yes, customs are more religiously, spiritually oriented, and norms are more, in general, ordinarily situations oriented. So it does not mean that norms are necessary for any religious purpose. Customs, however, are more traditional, a component of heritage, but norms, uh, they can be secular, they may be political, they may be economic, or anything. Yes, but however, these two are very much related. Yes, there are a particular pattern, defined standard of pattern. Yes, if a particular person obeys, if a particular person obeys these norms, then it is believed that this person is in line with the society rules. And so, in this case, there will be stability in the society. If a person opposes a particular norm, so it will lead to instability. Yes, there will be protests, there will be violence. So these are norms. The third component which we'll be discussing is sanction. Yes. Now sanctions consist. So sanctions, we will be discussing sanction in more detail when we will be studying our laws rules, and I think we will be studying laws rules in a political anthropology in unit 4. But for like at this moment, what we can study is that sanctions include rewards or penalties. Yes, for example, if we talk about in the international rewards and penalty, reward is kind of a positive sanction, and penalty is kind of a negative sanction. Yeah. So, for example, if we talk about the Russia-Ukraine war, the sanctions which are being imposed on Russia are a kind of penalties. Yes. Similarly, if if a citizen, like if a teacher is there, and for example, uh, we give, like a student gives tribute to his guru, या जिसे हम लोग in हिंदी we call ऋण चुकाना. So it is a form of a positive sanction. Said that is, we have a certain degree of obligation towards our teacher. Yes, so this is positive sanction. Uh, Now the fourth component, like there are many components which you can write by your own. You can mention customs, you can mention traditions, then you can mention about the material aspects. In material aspects, you can write about tools. So there are a lot of things, but these are the specific terms which were mentioned in the notebook. So I'm telling only those terms. Now, if you now similarly, like we can write about material aspect also. I will give this in short. First of all, like you can talk about the tools. Yes. So in tools, we have studied about the hand axes, cleavers, microliths, your blades. So these all tools are to some extent represents the material aspect of a culture. It is using these tools we were able to figure out how a particular culture was being shaped and which kind of food material was being in use material in use. For example, we find that the harpoons were discovered. Now, what are harpoons? Harpoons are of this shape. Yes, so this shape. Now, harpoons, the shape is used in fishing. Yes, so from a harpoon, from a tool, we were able to figure out the culture of a particular aspect. Similarly, in tools, there is also pottery, another important aspect. Pottery became common or became a characteristic of the Neolithic phase. Yes, from Neolithic phase, different types of potteries were there. For example, like they were black red ware, they were painted gray ware. So based on different type of potteries, different types of cultures have been figured out. So what happens that in a particular pottery, and this is there, in a particular ware, different colors were in use. So these colors were actually derived from the natural materials. Yes. So the type of natural material which was being derived can give us understanding about the capacity, the capability of the humans at that moment of exploiting the natural resources which were being present at that time. Similarly, the potteries also indicate that the food materials which were being produced were getting stored, and this storage implies that agriculture production was in surplus stage. See, when there is a surplus state, only then there will be a need of a container, of a place where things can be stored. So pottery provided a significant aspect at this moment. Yes. So these are two materials which you can mention. Like similarly, you can also mention about housing, how the house patterns were there. You can mention about the settlement patterns. Yes, so you can mention about your settlement and settlement pattern. You can write about nucleated, scattered, and so these are all many things which you can mention. And to write all these points, when you will be able to complete the whole of the anthropology syllabus, only then you will be able to understand in which sense I'm telling this and how I was able to write this. These things are not mentioned in any of the notes. It is something which I am telling by what I have learned over the years studying this subject. Yes. So these four things are must which you have to write. But apart from this, like apart from these three things, there is one specific term which is very much important, and this could be like used anywhere. Culture traits. So culture traits are culture traits, what are these? Culture traits are the smallest. The definition is that they are the smallest and indivisible unit of culture. They are the smallest and indivisible unit of culture. Smallest and indivisible unit of culture. They are the smallest and indivisible unit of culture. Yes, these culture traits are the building blocks of culture. Are the building blocks of culture. These traits can be these traits can be material or non-material. Yes, material, and it is analogous to the unit of human body. That it is analogous. If we establish an analogy, so culture traits culture traits are similar to the cells. We studied that culture, like not yet studied, but we will study that culture is super organic, society is organic. So in a so for these culture traits will be similar to a cell. And if we break an organism, the simplest unit is a cell. Similarly, if we break culture, if we break society, the simplest unit will be a trait. Yes. Now, each culture trait has a form, has a form, use, function, and meaning. Has a form, use, function, and meaning. So, this is what culture traits are. Uh, we will be studying like culture traits. Yes. So, for example, if you talk about like for like marriage is one such culture trait. Similarly, family, kingship, these all are culture traits. Yes. Uh, so this is what it is. Yeah. If we go into more detail, a particular question which in earlier part I was talking about, that is the culture pattern. So if we study that part, we will find that culture traits. If we join culture traits, there are two patterns. There are two words, more terms. One is culture complex, and the other is a culture pattern. Yes. So culture complex, complex word was also there in the E.B. Tyler definition. Yes. So what is culture complex? Culture complex is basically an organization of different culture traits. That is when different culture traits come together and combine, they form a culture trait. They form a culture complex. They form a culture complex. For example, Hindu culture complex. Hindu culture complex. Yes. In Hinduism, like in Hindu, as an Hindu, what we see that we have a certain kind of a marriage which is being practiced. Yes, there are certain rules in families. There are certain kingship. There are certain settlement rules. For example, if you talk about marriage, there will be endogamy rules. There will be exogamy rules, and these rules, they shape a culture complex. Yes. Now, when we talk about culture pattern, when we talk about culture pattern is basically a combination of culture complex. That is when different culture complexes combine, it forms culture patterns. Yes. So it can be said that culture pattern is an interrelated interaction between culture complexes. That is, it is an integration of culture complexes. Integration of culture complexes. This symbol is a this symbol stands for integration. This symbol stands for integration. Yes. So culture pattern is an integration of culture complexes. Now, for example, Indian culture pattern. Indian culture pattern. Yes. Now, what is Indian culture pattern? See, look, understand these three terms and culture traits, culture complex, and culture pattern from a diagram perspective. Like these are culture traits. For example, this is one trait, this is another trait. Yes, they combine together to form a culture complex. Similarly, these are some traits. They combine to form a culture complex too. Yes. Now, when these two culture complex they combine, it forms a culture pattern. Yes. For example, India, a culture pattern is Indian culture pattern. One culture complex can be Hindu culture complex. The other culture complex can be Buddhist culture complex. Similarly, there may be other religion-based culture complex. There may be other, like for example, there may be a tribal culture complex. So when these different culture complex they combine, they form a culture pattern. Now, what does pattern mean? Culture pattern, like if you look at the word pattern, you will find that there will be certain trend, there will be certain commonality which will be there in India, and this commonality, this pattern which you observe in India as a whole, as a culture, are due to different culture complexes combining and giving it a different shape. So when we say that the word that culture is a complex whole and it is greater than the sum of its part. So this is what it means that when different culture complexes combine together, it will give it will give a pattern which is unique in itself. Yes, so this is what the meaning of culture traits, culture complexes, culture patterns are. Now, what we will do is we will try to study culture pattern in a more detailed manner because culture pattern is a very important topic. It is being studied in your from anthropological school perspective, and a question can be asked on it. Like it can be asked from a 10 marker or a 15 marker perspective, and it becomes very important that you study detail, not only examples, but the different anthropologists who have given theories related to it. Yes. So what we study is the patterns of culture. Patterns of culture. Now, patterns of culture, it can be defined as an integration or arrangement of traits and complexes. So it can be defined as an integration and arrangement of what culture traits and culture complexes. Also, when it is a pattern, it means that it is not a random accumulation of traits. It is not a random accumulation. There were certain rules, there were certain standards because of which that different traits were integrated. It was not a random process. There were certain forces which led to the traits combining together, to form complexes, which then led to combine further to form patterns. Yes, so it says that the whole is greater than the sum of its. This is the symbol for sum, greater than the sum of its parts. Yes. Now, if we study from an anthropological perspective, for example, E.B. Taylor. No, sorry. For example, the first person to study this was A.L. Kroeber. A.L. Kroeber, in his work Configuration of Culture, he gave two patterns. he gave two patterns to culture. First pattern was basic or systematic pattern, and the second pattern was secondary pattern. Yes. Now the basic or systematic pattern, like what he writes, is that these basic or systematic patterns are stable, persistent, consistent organization of different traits. For example, for example, the alphabet complex. For example, the alphabet complex. Yes, the language complex is one of the basic form in which a culture pattern was established. Yes, how different words, the different sayings, the different words, they combine together to form one of the simplest forms, that is the alphabet complex. Similarly, when we talk about secondary pattern, they are relatively, for him, they are relatively unstable. They are relatively unstable, and there is a high degree of variety in it.